again, was in total disrepair, as you may have remembered. I set out in the coffee house. Uh, But again, the idea of the Art Deco style was continued in here. The chrome was brought from the lobby on the sidewalls down here, all the way down to the front. Carol Hickey is a wonderful architect, and she was so easy to work with, and I'm sure it caused her many hours of frustration with changing things, and then I learned too to know what a change order is. I didn't know what a change order was in the we had Arthur Funk and Son to create her what she drew on papers. They were the general contractors in Lebanon. They did a wonderful job. And but sometimes I would say, that's not really what I wanted. I wonder if we can change that. And of course, she'd get back on the architectural plans, and I'm sure she was at times saying some words that maybe we wouldn't want to hear. But she was great, and she would add things. She had great ideas, and if she didn't think something would work, she'd say, you can do it, but here's why I don't think it would work. And it was just a wonderful couple of years, actually, of planning to get it to this point. And then she chose everything, not just drew the plans, but she chose the carpet design, and we went through it with her, but she was just very, very good. Do you have any questions at this point? The theater opened in about 1917, and when it was the Hippodrome, and there are pictures in the lobby of the old Hippodrome. This is, as I said earlier, this auditorium was not here in 1917. It was all in front of those doors that entered into the auditorium. And then in 1930, this was added. And again, it was a second-run house, and showed the porno, and then the religious films, and then closed, and then opened with the rock bands, and then we bought it in the early 90s, and we opened it in 1995.
Was there a balcony?
There was never a balcony here.
Okay.
When did you put the new sound system in?
The new sound system went in, we had a sound system that Clare Brothers put in originally when we opened, but it was a stereo sound, it wasn't digital sound. And when we showed, I think, Star Wars in about 2001 or 2, we changed from stereo sound to digital sound, and Clare Brothers did that as well, and also RMS Service Electronics in New York. And as I always many times announce when we're having one of those big mainline films that have lots of sound in them, that we're so proud of those two companies, because they really did. Clare Brothers designed the system for this space. Most theaters will just plop a system in, and the economics determine what goes in, whether or not it's good for that space or not. So Clare Brothers is wonderful. I don't know if you know about them, but
They just switched on Saturday, opened up their new rock Litz.
Oh, they did?
Yes, they are. It was a big article in the paper how they consolidated with other companies, and it's still not done. They're branching out, and
Absolutely fantastic. That's an international business.
yes, yes.
And it deals with all the major concerts in the world. And I know that they were doing the Sultans in Brunei one time, because we had someone lived in one of our apartments that worked for them. They did the Ed Sullivan Theater in New York. They do all the major stadium concerts. It's a huge company in that small town, but unless you have anything to do with sound, you don't realize that they're there, or the size of their company. Do you have any
They
statement
combined with somebody else now. And they're going to have housing and all that when they come in. There will be housing for them, and it's
So
just in the
somebody-
first stage of the.
Yeah,
I think it's called Rock Litz or
rock
something.
Litz, yeah.
Did you see the?
The building sits actually in the back lot of our supermarket.
Oh,
in
okay.
Litz. It's behind Tim's Market, so we get to see this thing whenever we go shopping. And watching this thing rise from the ground with half a dozen cranes and all of the stuff involved in putting up a structure has been just enormous fun. The thing is, the building is a cube, essentially, and it's black. And so, you know, my wife joking, she said, they're building Mecca for the rock trade because it looks like the Kaaba of where you make your pilgrimage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, it's this great big black.
So
Cube.
those well-known people and rock groups will come in and record, is that what they'll do in there?
To record, rehearse, whatever they need to do, do planning for new shows, Tate Towers that does all of the staging, all the, you know, all those aluminum superstructures and everything. They're kind of rolled in with the Clairboys.
Okay.
And I mean, it's one-stop shopping, and unless you're watching for it, you'll never notice people coming in, unless they want.
I think
you
it
to
was
know
like
about it.
a secret type thing. People didn't know who was there
Yeah,
performing. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I think that's, you know, why they probably put the housing and stuff in so that they have a little privacy.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you got a boost when one of the Lebanon theaters couldn't show Jumanji or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And why couldn't they show it? You know why?
There was some disagreement that they had with the studio, and I don't know what it was all
okay.
about. But the studio did not want to put a film in there because of the disagreement they had. So the disagreement turned our history here because, and then again, we went on to the first run and have been that ever since. We're going to turn it over to Don.
All right. Since we've just been talking about digital, one of the things that we had done a number of years ago, when Skip had, it was after you had first opened, but not too many years, he'd been interested in having a theater organ in here. And so I was able to find one online. We got it and got it fixed up, and it sat down here in the pit and was used most Fridays and or Saturday nights before the films, and then for a few other things. And a couple of years ago, friends of mine came across this console. It was a different instrument. It was a commercially made unit. It had been a Rogers electronic organ. And I had used it as a practice organ at home for a number of years, and then got the idea that it would be kind of cool to convert it over to a digital instrument. And so basically, we gutted the Rogers organ. One of my students and I rebuilt the interior works of it, and it now is an instrument called a Hauptwerk. This is it's American made, but it's a digital representation. What you see on the computer screen are the actual stop tabs of the instrument that I'm playing. The organ that this is playing is the organ from the Chicago Paramount Theater, but it's all stored digitally in the computer. And so when you strike a note, you're actually playing back a recording of the real thing. It's very much the way our digital projection system works. And this allows us to still do the programs before the movies, but we're also now expanding out, and we're going to be doing some silent film accompaniment with the organ. We're going to be doing a Charlie Chaplin film, Charlie Chaplin in The Kid, and it's his directorial debut, and it's also the debut of Jackie Coogan, who appears as a little kid in the film. Great film.
Don, how did you and Skip meet, and where do you teach?
How did we meet?
I think you were simply attending movies here at the Allen, and didn't we meet that way? You were coming
that
Yes.
sounds right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you introduced yourself or
Yeah.
something, and maybe upon exiting the theater, but I think you
Yeah,
guys
we got
were regular
talking about
customers.
organ and stuff. Well, there had almost been there had been an organ in here that had taken over the theater. Right?
Yes, a pipe organ.
Yeah.
A real pipe organ, yep.
Yeah, and there's the one problem with the space in here is there's just not room for a pipe organ. So, but he still wanted the general effect of it, and so this is how we wound up. Yeah, that's-
Someone was donating a pipe organ to us, and as the pipes kept coming in, I had no idea that they took up that much space, and I felt so badly. This was before we opened, actually.
Right, yeah.
And I had to tell them, we don't have the room for this. I don't know where that organ ever got to.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
People look at the console and assume that that's the organ. But in the case of the pipe organ, or any instrument, that's just the control panel. The organ is located somewhere else, and there's usually tons of it. So,
Yeah.
anyway, why don't I just shut up and play? That probably would be the more interesting thing to do.
And
Typically, most of the bigger theaters had the organ on an elevator so that it could,
Hershey Theater.
yeah, it could disappear out of sight, then it could come up to stage level for a concert portion and then drop back down to what they called picture level, which was where the audience could still see a portion of the console, but the organist could actually see the screen. So we don't have the luxury of an elevator here, so just imagine.
Mentioning the Hershey Theater, we are so fortunate to have that theater here in Central PA. That is the greatest, most beautiful theaters. It rivals really anything that you see in New York.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a real gem too. And the Fulton is a gem, and the Capitol is great too.
Well, the Hershey is unique in that it's an atmospheric
Yes.
theater, so it's you feel like you're outdoors, indoors.
You can project
Clouds.
stars and clouds on the ceiling. I don't know if you've ever seen that up there, but it's a great theater.
So why don't I do a little come up out of the orchestra pit music?
Sounds good, and I'll get the light.
This was also typical of some of the older theaters where the ticket taker was the manager, was the projectionist, in some cases was also the piano player. So. What the instrument really was used for in the theater, because the initial theater organs were put in to accompany stuff. They were put in to accompany vaudeville acts, silent movies, anything that happened.